Great question. I think that the latest developments, of course, were somewhat long in the making, under consideration, because some in Congress, as you noted, have felt that any licenses for Huawei, for example, are problematic. But these particular licenses appear to be for semiconductors going into consumer devices like tablets. So it's unclear what provoked this. It's probably because Huawei's considerable rebound over the last 6 months in terms of some of its consumer products and handsets. But I think in terms of the relationship, this is complicated. Xi Jinping, during the phone call last month with President Biden, put technology controls on par with some other sensitive issues in the relationship, like Taiwan. And she said things like, "We will not stand idly by as the U.S. ratchets up these controls." So I think that this, for the remainder of the Biden administration, we're going to see more controls like this. And then when Trump comes in, I think there's still, assuming Trump comes in November, if he wins the election, I think things could get even worse, because there are some in the Republican camp, for example, that would like to see even stricter measures against companies like Huawei.
Paul, this probably caught your eye as well, and it certainly did mine. A recent piece in Foreign Policy, co-authored by Matt Pottinger, right? Used to be a journal, then became a Deputy National Security Advisor under Trump 1, that administration. He threw a lot of red meat out there, threw a lot of shade on the Biden administration for not being hawkish enough on China. And the line that caught me is, he was invoking Douglas MacArthur, almost calling, he was on the verge of calling for regime change in China. And this is a guy that is likely to be appointed if it does become Trump 2.0. So it seems to me like there's no other way for this relationship to go but tenser. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the Biden administration has really worked hard to try to stabilize the relationship, manage the relationship to avoid conflict, in the words of some senior U.S. officials. So that doesn't mean that there aren't these other major issues around, tech policy, around Chinese support for Russia, and about Taiwan and the South China Sea. So these are all issues that are very long-term and sort of structural, and there has not been a lot of progress on this. So the Pottinger-Gallagher article, I think, was a little bit of drew a little bit of controversy in the China watching community by basically, I think, overstating China's intentions, and then the response, the proposed response from the U.S. But it represents certainly one part of the foreign policy establishment in Washington that wants to see tougher approaches to China across the board. But I think, and I think that's why the election will be very important in November, because I think the Biden team is at least trying to keep the relationship stable. There's a very serious de-risking channel between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and that served pretty well to damp down some of the tensions around issues like Taiwan.